Can they see me or can they just see the screen?
That's a great question. Does somebody want to answer that? Let us know what you see.
Can somebody type in the Q&A box if you can see me or if you can just see my screen share? Because that I do not know. Oh, there's somebody. Oh, okay. When I speak, you can see me. Okay, well, I'll be talking the whole time, so you'll see me. Eleanor, can you also let me know? Can you still see my screen? Do I just pop up in the corner, or can you still see the screen when I'm talking? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, they can see both. Perfect.
Great.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us and working through little tech kinks, but I think we're ready to roll right now. So with us today, we have certified plant-based chef and former Food for Life instructor, Tracie Hines, and she is here to talk about adopting a plant-based diet. Research has shown that a plant-based diet can prevent many chronic illnesses, and it is also a way to slash greenhouse gases, saving the earth at the same time as saving your health. This program is part of the Wilmington Earth Year series, and we would like to thank the 2019 Friends of the Library annual appeal for the funding. And also, please consider joining us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for a talk by Gregory Maguire, author of Wicked, and you'll have to register for that on our website. And then tune in Thursday as well at 2:30 p.m. to WCTV and enjoy a 1-hour concert, jazz concert featuring the music of the great Duke Ellington. So with that, Tracie?
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for taking time out of your Tuesday night. I'm honored. I'm excited to talk to you about a plant-based diet and the power it has to completely transform health. I never get tired of talking about this. So I've never presented this way where I can't see you. So forgive me if it takes getting used to, but I'll do the best I can. If you have any questions, type a comment or question in the Q&A box and it'll pop up, and I'll try and stop as we go and answer any questions or address any concerns anybody has. So my name's Tracie Hines. I've been plant-based since 2014. And I've been teaching this way of eating since about 2017. So my story, and I'll breeze through that because I want to really talk more about the science and the health benefits and the tips and tricks. But my story is that I had a physical with my doctor that year, 2014. And he had, I actually think his story is more interesting than mine. He had just lost 2 middle-aged male patients to sudden cardiac death, and he was devastated. And if you're not familiar with what sudden cardiac death is basically when the first sign of really serious cardiovascular disease is a fatal heart attack. So he lost 2 of his middle-aged male patients, and he was pretty upset. I don't know all the details. I don't know what medications they were on, but they were fit guys, ate a relatively healthy-ish diet, and they died. So my doctor started doing some research, and in his research, he came across a book called The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And if anybody's taking notes, and I actually have his name elsewhere in the presentation, look that book up because if you're interested in geeking out on this topic, he recommended to me. He actually started recommending to all his patients that they read that book, and I did. And it completely just blew my mind wide open. It's not a technical scientific book. It's a layperson's book, and it's fascinating. He also recommended, I can't remember if it was this same appointment, but the Forks Over Knives documentary. And that was also just completely riveting. So once I took in this information, I decided I was going to do this 100%. That's just the kind of person I am. If I'm going to do something, I do it all in. Everybody's different. Some people need to dip their toes in the water and transition. I'm all or nothing. That's just my way. So I started researching it, decided I was going to do this, sat my family down and did it. My husband is a firefighter, and he just does not live to eat. He eats to live. So he eats whatever I cook, and was happy to go along for the ride. My 2 teenagers said, hell no. And my youngest daughter said, hell yes. So we're a mixed, complicated food family here, but it works. So since then, since that transition, I wanted to learn more and learn more. And I wanted to learn how to cook and cook interesting food. So I went and got my plant-based chef certification from Ruby. And I went and got a certificate in plant-based nutrition from the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. And then I ended up getting certified to teach the Food for Life curriculum through the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And I'll talk about them a little bit more. And then I started a fun little side thing with one of my best friends who lives in Italy. She actually was curious about learning about a plant-based diet, was in the United States. She lives in Italy, was in the United States. We got together and she had some pretty serious rheumatoid arthritis stuff going on and debilitating. She said, I'm going to give this a try and see if it helps. Within 1 month, her rheumatoid arthritis was almost completely gone. So she became a convert and started eating this way too. And we also started doing plant-based wine tours in the northern Italy region, which is obviously on hold now. But if you're interested in learning about any of this, you can go to my website, which is traciehines.com, and there's information there about all of that. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions, if not, I'm going to dive right in. So, oops, let me get into there we go. So the thing about this way of eating is it's got amazing, wonderful side effects as opposed to medications. So it's incredible for the environment. If you're concerned about minimizing your footprint on the earth, as I am, actually my bachelor's and master's degrees are in environmental conservation. So I was kind of primed for this lifestyle anyways. Unbelievable benefits to the environment that we'll talk about towards the end. And I'm not going to get into the ethics issues. That's a whole other kind of somewhat loaded topic. I love that my way of eating does not harm any animals. That's, but I find, to be honest with you, as I'm teaching and interacting with people, that people are more motivated selfishly, and maybe rightly so, by their own health. So I'd prefer to go at it that way. I feel like we can convert more people if we're going at it from the health angle, and the health benefits are incredible. Plant-based diets, kind of three-legged stool of benefits: physical health benefits, environmental benefits, and if you care about the animals and the horrors of factory farming, which are also terrible for the environment, then you're doing some good there as well. Oops. So, do you want to enjoy weight loss, reduced inflammation, increased energy and vitality, clear skin, reduced incidence of chronic disease, better sleep? The list, actually, there's more to this list. There is a magic pill, and the magic pill is a plant-based diet. I'm here to tell you. You might end up hearing here and there from people in the world that people who are skeptical, people who are like, well, I don't think you can get enough nutrients by eating that way, or you can't get enough protein by eating that way, or oh, you're gonna be tired, or there's all kinds of myths that I'll get into shortly. But truly, this has been clinically shown to be the healthiest way of eating. Kaiser Permanente is the largest managed care organization in the United States, one of the largest. They now provide materials to every single one of their doctors, and they ask them to share the power of a plant-based diet with their clients. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the notes. Dr. Kim Williams, the president of the American College of Cardiology, he also recommends eating this way, and numerous health organizations do. The list of doctors on the right is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm just going to look in the chat box real quick because I see some chat notes coming up. Oh, the title of the first book was The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And Ellen, I'm just letting you know, Nancy's saying that her audio is distorted. So I hope other people's audio isn't also distorted. Okay, so other people are still hearing. Okay, great. Okay, so all of these doctors on the right-hand side all have books of their own. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he's a doctor who's out of the Cleveland Clinic. He's got a whole website, all kinds of information. Dr. McDougall is out of California, formerly Hawaii. These are the leaders in the field. One of my favorite books, and I think I have a list of books at the end that I can share with you, is called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. It's a comprehensive encyclopedia, but really easy to digest, easy to read with recipes and everything. And he gets into each of the diseases that a plant-based diet can prevent or reverse. So some of you may have heard about the blue zones. These are the parts of the planet where people are really healthy. The National Geographic had a special, I don't know if you can get it on PBS or if you can get it on the National Geographic channel anymore, but it was Dan Buettner who did the special and also wrote a book called The Blue Zones. These are the parts of the world where people are crazy healthy. There's literally no cardiovascular disease, literally no cancer, like not literally, there's just tiny incidences of all these chronic health diseases. And there's lots of factors, but one of the main factors is what they eat. And what they eat is mostly plants, very little animal products. Sorry, I'm just checking the chat box again. These folks are very healthy. They're very active. They're very physically active, and they're very healthy. They're eating lentils and beans in one form or another. In Greece, it might be chickpeas or lentils. In Japan, it might be tofu, edamame. In Italy, it might be cannellini beans or other kinds of beans. So beans, there was a little bit of a trendy thing in the health world. Some doctor came out and said beans weren't good for you. That's baloney. Beans aren't good for you if they're raw, and nobody eats raw beans. So that's the beans, and we'll get more into this a little bit later. Beans are truly a health food, and you want to incorporate them into your diet as much as possible. These are just some other quotes from Albert Einstein and Hippocrates, which, you know, to me, it's so obvious because I've been doing this for so long, but a lot of people I find in my life and my friend groups and my, you know, personal acquaintances, people sometimes have a really hard time making a connection between what they're eating and how they feel, and they are connected. If you are not nourishing your body with life-promoting, anti-inflammatory foods, your health is going to suffer, and we'll get into what those are in a minute. Oops. Okay. So a little gloom and doom before we get into the good stuff. This is 2017 data, so it obviously doesn't include COVID. And it'll be interesting to see where that falls. I'm sad and interesting to see where that falls in the next time they update this. But this is from the CDC. The items with an asterisk are the items that have a strong nutrition link. So the diseases like cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, they have a very strong nutrition link. It's not 100%, but it's very strong. And so one of the things I like to tell people is that your genes aren't your destiny. There's a whole field of science now called epigenetics, and it looks at how what you surround your genes with manifests in your life in terms of health. So I've heard it said this way, that your genes are a committee. They're not the judge and jury. Your genes may be predisposed towards cancer, say, if you have a certain type of gene, but if you only expose that particular gene to anti-inflammatory, cancer-fighting foods, that cancer might never manifest in your life. So we do have a lot of power. Our genes are not our destiny. And a lot of these leading causes of death in the United States have a very strong link to nutrition and dietary choices. Oops, okay, sorry about that. So diseases of affluence. When we talk about the diseases of affluence, we're talking about the things that I've talked about already, as well as autoimmune disorders, and obesity is now considered a disease, and obesity-related health problems. There's a direct link between what we put into our bodies and how our health is manifested. And we'll get into that a little bit more. The one thing I wanted to say about this too is that it's really striking when you look at rural parts of the undeveloped world or less developed countries. There's very, very little of these diseases. They might have cholera, they might have malaria, they might have other parasitic type health challenges, but you're not going to see a ton of colon cancer in the very, very rural parts of Africa. You're not going to see a lot of cardiovascular disease in the very, very rural parts of Peru, for example. And what's happened is those of us in the Western world and even Western parts, Westernized parts of those countries, we are all King Arthur now. We all have access to very, very rich, highly processed, very fattening, very sugary, very salty foods. And those foods are also addictive. And I'll talk about that too. So we're almost done with the gloom and doom section, sorry. And I'll zip through this. In the United States, we eat about 1 million chickens per hour and meat at more than 3 times the global average. And our health is suffering. You can see the red line here is chicken, and we're eating less beef. So that's good, but the chicken is skyrocketed because people think chicken's a health food. It's not. Chicken has, in addition to antibiotics, it has hormones that we don't want in our body. We want those, and hormones are not found in plant foods. So I'll talk about substituting protein sources in a minute. And this is just a visual representation of how our diet has changed in the United States over the past 100-ish years. Cheese is a real problem. It's addictive. It truly is. I can attest. It's very salty. It's very greasy, and that on your tongue triggers a dopamine response in your brain that is real. It's real. It's addictive, and it's hard to kick. It's possible, and I'll talk about that too. But it's a challenge. So here's, when was this data? This data is getting kind of dated. I need to update it. This is about 10 years old. And truth be told, when you look at this green, the 12% of plant food, I always ask people when I have people live and they can respond to guess what half of that is. And I'll tell you, well, see if you can guess. Guess what half of that green piece of the pie is. It is French fries. So half of our, or potatoes, half of our plant food is coming from French fries. So we're eating a lot of animal food, which includes dairy and eggs and fish. And we're also eating a lot of processed foods, which have a lot of added oils. And oil is a highly, highly processed food, even olive oil. And you can see that we are eating more oils than ever. We're eating less butter, less lard, less margarine, and less shortening. But the oils, we glug them on our salad and we think they're healthy. And what we do is we take a big, beautiful salad, fill it with all kinds of vegetables and maybe some seeds and nuts, and then we glug olive oil or any kind of oil all over it. And we've just taken the nutrition profile of that wonderful salad that's loaded with fiber and vitamins and phytonutrients and antioxidants, and we flipped it. Now most of the calories are from fat. So if you think of it that way, you could think of how we're adding oil and therefore a lot more fat to our diet. And when you think about olive oil, for example, that a lot of people think is a health food, it's not. It's very, very processed. You're better off eating the olives themselves. One little trick that I tell people, and I'll talk about at the end, is sauteing. I learned this in my chef's training. Saute in water instead of oil. You don't need the extra fat in the dish. And you just have a little cup of water next to your saute pan, and you add water so the food doesn't stick. Easy, and it keeps the meal, nutritional profile of that meal much better for you, and you've eliminated all that added fat and that highly processed oil that you really don't need. For example, case in point, just to see the comparison between sunflower seeds, kind of the whole form that Mother Nature gave you, and the processed oil. You really take the profile of the nutrition there, and the same volume, a quarter cup, you've gone from 16 grams of fat to 54 grams of fat. and that fat has been, those calories have been stripped of fiber, stripped of nutrients, stripped of protein. So always better when you can to go to the source and eliminate the oil as much as possible. In the plant-based nutrition field, the folks, many people are 100% no oil. And that's a really strong stance to take. I'm minimal oil. I have a tiny bit of oil in my diet. I don't go zero oil. Like if I'm roasting potatoes, I'll take a tiny bit of olive oil in my misto spray bottle and I'll give them a quick little spritz, toss them. You hardly need any. It's probably a quarter teaspoon at most. That's all I need. Dr. Esselstyn out of the Cleveland Clinic, he's one of, an international expert. He's taken people with cardiovascular disease and completely eliminated their cardiovascular disease with a plant-based diet, but he eliminates the oil 100% because those folks who've had some kind of cardiovascular issue, their lining, their arterial linings, the endothelium is very, very sensitive to oil, and it can set off a cardiac situation. That's not good. So some people are 100% no oil. I'm very, very low oil. And that's where I am. Sugar is also a problem. There are folks in the plant-based field who think sugar has been demonized more than it should have been, as opposed to demonizing animal products like eggs and beef and such. The truth is, sugar's addictive. One bit of data shows that sugar is 20 times more addictive than cocaine. There are brain scans that show it triggers the same dopamine response in the brain, and I can attest to, I'm a sugar addict. I've had to eliminate it as much as I can possibly from my daily life, because if it's here, I'll eat it. You can substitute agave syrup, maple syrup, coconut sugar. Those are all really good alternatives. Date sugar is the best because it's really a whole food. It's just dehydrated, dried dates, ground up. It's expensive, but coconut sugar is not that expensive. Agave syrup is not that expensive. So those are some alternatives to sugar. So we're trying to consume whole plant foods. And I'm going to switch this over to that in a second. I think this is the last slide on this topic, which is a term called TOFI, thin outside, fat inside. And some of you might be familiar with, oh gosh, I just forgot his name from Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser. This lovely gentleman was on a treadmill in Manhattan at a very shishi gym and dropped of a heart attack. And he might be dead if they didn't have a defibrillator there and they shocked him back. At the time he was eating, I think it was paleo or maybe keto, I'm not sure. Fit as a fiddle, super strong, but his arteries were clogged because he was eating all that grass-fed beef and that grass-fed butter, all that stuff he was eating, it was clogging his arteries. He looked fit on the outside, but his cardiovascular system was damaged severely to the point where he could have died from a heart attack. I believe he's now plant-based. And this is another book. I'm gonna zip through this because I want to make sure we have time at the end for questions. Dr. Doug Lisle is an incredible, he's basically an evolutionary psychologist. And this book I read as well. It was life-changing, and it helps you understand, and I bring this in when I teach women in recovery to help them understand how it is hard. It's very hard to change the way you're eating. Our taste buds have been hijacked by super stimuli foods. So back in the, we still have a Stone Age brain and we still have a Stone Age body for the most part. Evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective, that's where we are. So what that means is back in the Stone Age, there was no Snickers bars, there was no McDonald's, and there was no Ben and Jerry's. So unfortunately, because our body, our brain, our taste buds are still Stone Age organisms, those foods are super stimuli, and our body's gonna really like it because our body needed calories back then. We needed the sweet foods back then. So today's food environment has completely, it's just turned us all around. And so we are designed by nature for three things: seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. And the McDonald's drive-through is a perfect example of, you don't have to get out of your car, it's cheap, and you can have a nice big greasy cheeseburger that's going to hit all your pleasure sensors. So it takes work. It can be done. And the studies show, and Dr. Lyle talks about this in that book, The Pleasure Trap, it takes anywhere from 30 to 90 days to retrain your taste buds. Your taste buds are, I almost think of it as coded. Like the more you eat super stimuli foods like candy bars, like Ben and Jerry's, like pizza, like steak tips, the more you need to get that same pleasure response. When you peel those foods out of your diet, like I did 100%, it took me about 5 to 6 weeks. Actually, it was a little more than that. I think it was closer to 2 months. It was like 6 to 8 weeks before I could really clue into the flavors of the plant-based foods I was eating. The herbs and spices are that much more tasteful and flavorful for me. I had less of a tolerance for greasy foods, and I wasn't craving sugar as much. But the process took over a month. Some people it's 30 days, some people it's 90 days. It's a process. It's worth it. It's so incredibly worth it when you get to the other side of that process. It feels incredible. One thing that's unfortunate is that first of all, doctors have zero to very little training in nutrition. So if you're going to take this information to your doctor, you may very well be educating them. Medical school, hardly any nutrition training. It's starting to change, but it's very slow. A lot of doctors either don't know anything about it or they don't believe their patients can do it, so they don't recommend it. The truth is, when you study diet satisfaction, people who eat a varied plant-based diet have the best diet satisfaction. It could be that they're into it. There could be some skewing of the data there because they're excited to get healthy and they're excited to cook and eat healthy food. But the truth is, people stick to it. They stick to it, and I think the reason is because you start to make that that connection between what you eat and how you feel, and then you just don't want to stop. So, okay, what is a whole food plant-based diet? A whole food plant-based diet in its purest form is really whole, unrefined, or minimally refined plants. So this is fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans and legumes. Those are the 4 new food groups: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans and legumes. People who eat this way, this way of eating, you're avoiding highly refined foods like bleached flour, refined sugar, and oil. Raisins, whole food plant-based. The thing about raisins and dried fruits, they're very calorie dense because all of those calories have been reduced down to a smaller package. Same thing with like nut butters. So if weight is a concern of yours, and it isn't for everybody, but if weight is a concern of yours, you don't want to go crazy on the peanut butter or the almond butter or the raisins. You just want to have them in moderation. I work with a very limited number of clients one-on-one, and I actually sometimes have people who want to gain weight. And those folks, I'm telling them to eat more peanut butter and more almond butter, more avocados, more olives, get those healthy whole fats into their diet and healthy calories. But folks who want to lose weight, they just want to watch that. You don't want to eat, you don't want to go crazy. And these are the 4 new food groups. This is a graphic put out by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and I have a slide at the end with their website and a bunch of websites of a number of other organizations who promote plant-based diets. These are the 4 new food groups, and however you fill your plates up with them, have at it. There's a myth about fruit. Some people think like, carbs are bad. Carbs aren't bad. Our bodies are designed, your brain needs carbs. Your body's designed to thrive on carbs, not Twinkies, not cookies, not pretzels. I'm talking oatmeal. I'm talking brown rice, quinoa, beans have a lot of carbs in them. Even fruits have carbs. And people who, I sometimes hear people say, but I can't eat too much fruit. I don't want to gain weight. Nobody gained weight eating strawberries. I can't, I've never ever heard of that, or watermelon. The thing about fruit and the sugar in the fruit is it's packaged with fiber, water, and all kinds of vitamins and nutrients. So you don't want to eat just fruit. You don't want to eat just beans and legumes, just whole grains, just vegetables. You want a variety of these foods in your diet every day. Another way to define this way of eating is Dr. Thomas Campbell is Dr. T. Colin Campbell's son. He's also a physician. He wrote a book called The Campbell Plan, and he just kind of frames it a little bit differently. No animal products, no processed plant fragments. So the highly, like white flour, that's a processed plant fragment. All of the nutrients and fiber have been stripped out. So you want to avoid that and just focus on whole plants. Another way to look at it is people who ask, don't eat anything with a face or a mother. That's another way to look at it. Some people don't like that, but, and you're going to avoid these types of foods. Some people are really hooked on their eggs. One egg has more cholesterol than we're advised to have in a single day. So there are other things. People say, oh my gosh, what do you eat for breakfast? A whole grain Ezekiel bread toast with almond butter, or some overnight oats oatmeal with some raisins and almonds and soy milk on it, or what else? Oh, plant-based yogurt with granola on it. There's so many things. Avocado toast. Once you get into it, there's lots and lots of options. This is the question that I get the most. Are you sure you're getting enough protein? I have more energy than I did before I started eating this way. I sleep better. I had maybe 5 pounds to lose. The 5 pounds came off. The headaches were, I'm not completely free of headaches. I still get hormonal headaches once in a while, but for the most part, they're gone. I mean, and I have energy and I'm getting plenty of protein. This is the protein in common plant-based foods. And believe it or not, broccoli has more protein than beef, calorie per calorie. So if you're eating a variety of plant-based foods, you're going to be getting just plenty of protein. There's a newish book out called Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. I'm still reading it. I haven't finished it yet. But he talks about how excess animal protein really does a number on your organs, and it's not good for you. Most Americans get too much protein. Another way of eating that I love to talk about is nutritarian. For people who are really, really into this, this is the way to go. This is Dr. Joel Fuhrman's approach. He's got a whole system, and his book was called Eat to Live. Yes, Eat to Live. And that was published ages ago, and I think it's been updated since. But he suggests basing food choices on maximizing the micronutrients per calorie. So talk about geeking out. I love it. Basically, you wouldn't eat green grapes because purple grapes or red grapes have more nutrients. You wouldn't eat, if you're going to go for a banana or blueberries, you'd go for the blueberries because they have more nutrients. So that's his way of eating. And he's put together a whole nutrient density chart. And nutrient density talks about the amount of nutrients per calorie of food. And the most nutrient dense foods on the planet are all plant foods. They are not animal foods. Animal foods have protein and fat and a few other things, but it's the plant kingdom where you're going to find just a crazy variety of nutrients. For example, nutrient density versus calorie density. This graphic just shows you the photo on the left, less calories, but loaded with nutrients. The graphic on the right, if you're seeing it the way I'm seeing it, far more calories, hardly any nutrients. And this is Dr. Fuhrman's Andy scale. He's taken it all and broken it down to some crazy chemical algorithm, mathematical formula. And for example, at the top of the chart are the greens. And most of us know that now, like kale, mustard greens, watercress, collard greens, those foods. If you can get those into your diet every day, please do try. A quick tip is I always have either frozen kale or frozen collard greens in my freezer. Frozen spinach too. Spinach is one of those foods. Greens are a really great source of calcium, and we'll get into calcium in a minute. But spinach is stingy with its calcium. It won't let you have it. Whereas the other leafy greens do let you have it. So they're going to be a good source of calcium. It's a little confusing because walnuts and avocados are at the bottom. It doesn't mean they're not good for you. It just means it's a mathematical formula. It just means because they're higher in fat and calories, that relative to the calorie nutrient content of, say, kale, they're not as high. They're still good for you. So the foods on the higher end of the scale, you're going to want to fill your plate with as much of those as possible. And the foods at the lower end of the scale, you want to have them. You want to have them, daily if you can, but just not in huge quantities. This is normally where I'd be looking at people saying, does that make sense? And you can't see me, so hopefully it makes sense. Transition foods are those foods we call transition foods. They help you get through. They're fine, and they're an acquired taste. I actually think some of them are really delicious. They can give a texture and a different kind of taste to soups and salads and casseroles and things. They're highly processed, a lot of them. There's a lot of ingredients. Sometimes they have a lot of salt, and sometimes they have a heck of a lot of fat. So you're not going to want to go crazy on these foods. But like if I'm making a chili for my family and it's got a ton of beans and vegetables in it, I might throw a couple tofu sausages in there just to mix it up a little bit and get my kids, trick my kids into eating some of it or more of it. So these are what we call transition foods. There's a gazillion on the market. They're probably an acquired taste if you've never eaten this way before, but it's worth giving them a try and you'll get used to it. Better alternatives, better whole food alternatives are veggie burgers. You can buy those processed, but they're super easy to make. We'll talk about meal prep in a minute, but like on a Sunday afternoon, you can spend an hour and just make a whole batch of veggie burgers, lay them out on parchment paper on a baking pan, freeze them, put them in Ziploc bags in your freezer, and you've got like quick, easy lunches and dinners for the month. And there's tons of recipes for veggie burgers out there. Tofu, tempeh, and seitan, those are also good, better meat alternatives. They all come from edamame or soybeans. I try to buy organic whenever I can because those are pesticide heavy when they're not organic. Lentils and beans. Another tip I do, or trick I do, you make a spaghetti sauce and you can just put red lentils in there. They completely dissolve. They give it fiber and just a little different texture, thicker texture, and nobody knows they're in there. If you don't mind the texture, you could put the green lentils in. They keep their form a little bit better and they're chewy. And they add fiber and nutrients to the sauce as well, and you're getting protein. Coconut bacon is another tip. It's basically coconut shreds soaked in maple syrup, liquid smoke, and tamari, and baked. It's really delicious, and some other options here as well. So I'd like to say a particularly damning word about dairy. If you're still drinking cow's milk, I encourage you to consider switching to one of the other plant-based alternatives. We know a lot about dairy. Milk does not do a body good. There's a very powerful and well-funded lobby that has, we still have those Got Milk signs up in our schools. Dairy has something called IGF-1 in it. It's called insulin-like growth factor, and you can literally drip it on cancer cells in a petri dish, and the cancer will just proliferate. And you take it away, and the cancer slows down. There's also a protein in dairy called casein, and that's also a cancer promoter. The countries that eat the most dairy, this is on my last, let me go back. The countries that eat the most dairy products have the highest incidence of hip fractures in their elderly. And there's something that happens in the body. It's a complicated chemical process where the bones actually leak oxygen. I can't explain it. I'm not gonna be able to explain it clearly, but a lot of the plant-based milks, soy milk, almond milk, if you're really concerned about the environment, oat milk is probably the best way to go right now. Almond milk is very, very highly processed, and there's environmental side effects to almond milk that the other plant-based milks don't have. There's hemp milk. You can get hazelnut milk. There's tons. You can get them sweetened, unsweetened. I would suggest you can get coffee creamers with plant-based coffee creamers, plant-based yogurts. There's so many alternatives, and we are the only species that drinks the milk of another species, and it has serious negative health consequences. Again, it's a taste adjustment. It might take you a little time. Here are some better sources of calcium from plant-based sources rather. Kale, tons of calcium, and it's actually more bioavailable, meaning your body can absorb more of the calcium in kale than it can the calcium in dairy. Broccoli and sesame seeds. Sesame seeds are a really great source of calcium. So fiber is something I love to talk about. It's one of those things that most Americans don't get enough of. At a minimum, the doctors in the field, who I consider experts, Dr. Greger, Dr. Neil Barnard from the Physicians Committee, and others recommend at least 40 grams of fiber a day. The cultures around the world who are eating this much fiber have very little, I should say, far less incidence of cancer than Americans do. Why is that? Well, fiber is, let me go to my next slide. There's two kinds of fiber. There's soluble fiber and there's insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber is the kind that dissolves in water. Like, you know, if you put the inside of an apple in a dish of water, it'll swell up and get kind of spongy. Well, that kind of soluble fiber, it's going to act like a sponge in your digestive tract. It's going to, sorry, I'll check the, I'll go through the questions at the end. Soluble fiber is going to act like a sponge in your digestive system. It's going to soak up excess toxins and excess hormones and flush them out of your body. Insoluble fiber is a complement to soluble fiber. It acts like a scrub brush in your digestive system, and it's going to promote the movement of material through your digestive system. So you're going to want to eat both. And an apple is a perfect example. The skin is insoluble, and the inside of the apple is soluble. So perfect. Mother Nature made this perfect example of something we should be eating every day. At a minimum, 40 grams of fiber. When I first started eating this way, I did track what I ate just to get myself on track. And there's a tracking tool I'll share with you at the end. And one of the things I did track was my fiber. You should build up slowly because, yes, gas is a problem for some people, but your body adjusts. So as you build up over time, it's not a problem. And we'll get into like how many beans a day. Somebody asked, are canned beans okay? Absolutely. I always have dried and canned beans. I buy organic canned beans in bulk at Costco when they have them. Canned beans are often very salty, so you want to rinse them and get that salt off, so you don't take too much salt in. But canned beans are perfectly fine. I think they've eliminated the BPA from the cans. And this is just a graphic I love because I'm always pushing beans on people. Bean options. Some people struggle with this. You can buy, Trader Joe's has prepared lentils. You can buy them. They're already, they're cooked, they're seasoned, and they're in like a freeze-dried container, like a bag, and they last like forever in your fridge. And you could throw them in salads, on soups, a million different things you can do with them. Like I said, I have dried. I do have an Instant Pot. That's a whole other topic. It's not your grandmother's Instant Pot. You're not going to blow up your kitchen with it. They have it all newfangled with kind of fail-safe things on it. I was always scared to use the old kind. I have beans every day. I probably have a cup and a half of beans a day. And tofu counts. If you're into tofu, there's so many different things you can do with tofu. Edamame, steamed edamame with a little salt. Hummus, that's beans. Black beans, there's so many options. I'm going to talk for 1 second because I'm going to try and wrap up in like 10 minutes and then see if we have time for me to go through some questions. how to read a food label. This is I could do like a whole hour workshop on this. But really, the things you want to be looking at are saturated fat. So saturated fat comes from animal products. The only plant-based source of saturated fat is coconut. So people also think coconut oil is a health food. And I think Bob Harper, The Biggest Loser, the guy who had the heart attack at the gym that I talked about earlier, he was spooning coconut oil into his coffee, thinking he was getting these great fats. It has saturated fat in it. And saturated fat is going to clog, it's going to slow down the flow of blood and clog things up. And that's not good. So if saturated fat says 0, you're good. You want 0 saturated fat. You also want, and this is a complicated math formula that I'm not going to get into. In general, 20-ish% of your calories per day, 30 at most, coming from fat. And ideally the whole fat sources, nuts, seeds, beans have just a little bit of fat in them, avocado, things like that. The one thing I really wanted to focus on here are actually 2 things. Cholesterol. Cholesterol, two interesting things. There's no cholesterol in plant foods. Cholesterol only comes from animal foods. And our bodies make enough cholesterol we don't need anymore. So we don't need to eat animal products. We have our body makes its own cholesterol. So if you're eating animal products, you're getting extra cholesterol that you don't need. If something has 0 cholesterol, it's highly likely it has 0 animal products. Not definitely, but usually. The other thing is sodium. Most Americans end up with high blood pressure. And once you get it, it's really hard to undo it. So you want to watch your sodium intake. And the sodium culprit is processed foods. It's not the salt we're shaking on our meals. You want the sodium to be equal to or less than the calories per serving. This graphic is from, and I list these resources at the end, the UC Davis, they have a integrative medicine program rather. This graphic should be available there if you're interested in getting this. So a couple myths I'd like to bust. This is my favorite one. Eating a plant-based diet means you'll be hungry all the time. And remember I talked about fiber? Let me go to this. This is a graphic I like better. This is why plant-based foods will help keep you lean and satisfied and full longer. This is what 500 calories looks like. And the picture of the oil and the cheese and the meat, all those calories are condensed with 0 fiber. There's no fiber there. The potatoes, rice, and beans, those have fiber. Those are going to fill you up more. They're going to absorb that water and swell, and they're going to soak up all the excess hormones, all the toxins in your system and flush them out. But the fruits and veggies, you can eat those all day and into tomorrow, and you're going to be full. So when people see like, when I make a salad, it almost sometimes looks like it's for 4 people, and I'll eat it in like a huge, almost like a serving bowl. And there's not a ton of calories in it, not that I'm counting calories, but it'll have roasted vegetables, it'll have maybe some spinach, it'll have some maybe some sesame seeds or some sunflower seeds and some cranberries, and avocado. And I'm going to be full. I'm going to eat that whole bowl and I'm going to be full for hours because it's got all that fiber in it. Now I want to transition a little bit. Actually, does anybody have, let me take a minute and go through oh, I just lost there we go. Let me just take a minute and check and see if there's any questions. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Okay, great. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so in terms of the environmental benefits, when I was in college, I was a vegetarian for quite a while, and mostly for the environmental reasons. This graphic here in the slide shows the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico caused by runoff from animal agriculture. It's heartbreaking. If you're someone who cares about the earth and cares about the environment more than you care about your health, there are those people out there. I meet them occasionally. That's a good enough reason to eat this way. It takes 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat. It takes 30 gallons of water to make a pound of potatoes. It takes 244 gallons of water to make a pound of tofu. So if this is something you care about, eating this way is just going to reduce your footprint big time. Eggs also take a massive amount of water, and cheese. Cheese is highly, highly processed. When we say we want to steer away from processed foods, we sometimes forget about cheese because, you know, the Italians have been eating it forever, and the Greeks have been eating it forever, and in Greece and Italy. You know, they have been, but they haven't been eating it in the sheer quantities. Like in America, we supersize everything. So I've traveled through Italy quite a bit. They are not eating the quantity of cheese we're eating. And when you get pizza in Italy, it's not like Pizza Hut. You're not getting like, you know, half a pound of cheese in your piece of pizza. You're getting a little bit of cheese sprinkled on, and then it's covered in arugula or something else. So yes, they eat it, but not in the quantities that we do. And cheese is a highly processed food. Animals raised for food produce 130 times more excrement than the entire human population. And where does that go? A lot of it is polluting our water systems, fresh and salt. So you see what happens here in the Gulf of Mexico. I have a question. Jessica says, best milk source for a person with a nut allergy. I would say probably oat or soy milk. And Market Basket has everything now. Oatly is a brand that I like. I just like the taste. It comes in the cold section with the other milks, or you can get in the dried section, you can get oat milk as well in the dried cartons. But I would suggest oat milk or soy milk. Hemp milk is, I don't know if you have a nut allergy, hemp milk might be an issue. My daughter has a tree nut allergy, so I don't know if hemp milk would set her off or not, but I would stick with oat or soy. And soy, I'll revisit. I'm going to make a note to revisit soy in a minute, because soy is really good for you. There's an urban myth out there that it's not, and it's not true. Okay, so moving on. Now we talked about water, and now we're talking about land. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinction, and we see this in Brazil right now. It's heartbreaking. Ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction. I didn't mention at the beginning, but one of my careers was working in land conservation, and I worked in the land conservation field for about 20 years, working for private and public agencies, protecting open space. We're really in the United States, it's mostly for suburban, development. But in places like Brazil, a lot of the rainforest is being destroyed for animal agriculture. 70 billion farmed animals are reared annually worldwide, and more than 6 million animals are killed for food every hour. And I'm not going to get into the ethics of that. That's a personal issue for people. There's tons of documentaries you can find that'll be pretty hard to watch. But when you think about the environmental impacts of raising all those animals and slaughtering all those animals, it's pretty significant. And then when you look at greenhouse gas emissions, it's incredibly significant. And I have a question. Actually, I'm going to get to these questions. I'm going to get to these questions at the very end. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Now we get into land, because people think grass-fed beef is the answer, or grass-fed dairy. I'm here to tell you it's actually not, because those types of food production systems are very land intensive. The American average is consuming over 200 pounds of meat a year, and I'm not eating any, so somebody else is getting mine. A person who follows a vegan diet produces half the carbon dioxide and a fraction of all of these other resources listed in the slide. I won't read them. So if you're choosing to eat this way, you can feel really good about it. You're not just helping your body, you're helping the planet. I heard a quote somewhere that a vegan driving a Hummer still has a huge percentage less impact than a carnivore driving a Toyota Prius. So I don't know that that's how true that is, but I heard that once. So it takes a lot of land to feed all these livestock, and we're better off just eating the plants directly. So what does it take to make a 1/4 pound hamburger? Just that one little hamburger, a lot of water, a lot of land and a lot of fossil fuels. Animal agriculture is very, very resource intensive. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to tips and tricks. I want to be respectful of your time and try and wrap up a little bit after 8. So when I teach in classes and I coach people one-on-one and I'm teaching women in recovery, there's lots of tips and tricks that are really, you have to kind of incorporate into your life for making these changes. And I always say to people, like, some people say, it's so hard. How do you do it? Well, if you're going to be no matter what health means to you, it's an investment of time. Exercise, walk at a minimum half-hour a day if you can. Yes, buying and cutting up fruits and veggies takes a little time. It's worth it. Meal planning, meal prep, and batch cooking are my 3 top recommendations for people. Whatever day of the week is your shopping day, the day before, get out your cookbooks, go online, find some recipes to try. Figure out what you're going to cook for the week. For a lot of people, that's Sunday. For other people with different schedules, it might be a different day of the week. For me, it's typically Saturday. I'll think about what I'm going to shop, and then I'll shop on Sunday or Monday. Meal prep, and this is really like after grocery shopping. When I get home from the grocery store, I am stripping the kale, I am washing it, I am putting it in a Ziploc bag with a paper towel, I'm squeezing all the air out, and it's in the fridge, it's ready to go. I'm washing my carrots, I'm getting them all diced up or sliced up into sticks for snacks or to quickly cut and throw into salads and soups. What else? Some things you don't want to wash ahead of time, some fruits in particular, but you want to have them out and about where you can see them if they don't have to be refrigerated. So you're more likely to grab them and eat them instead of going digging for something that you might not want to have. And batch cooking. I never make one, how should I say this? I always double recipes every single time. I love leftovers. Some people in my family do not, but I've gotten them used to it. Nothing I like better than opening the fridge for lunch and having leftovers from a couple dinners to choose from. It takes me 2 seconds. I do use a microwave. I could microwave it or heat it up in the oven real quick. So easy. And if I'm going to get the kitchen dirty and I'm going to spend time in the kitchen, I'm going to double that recipe and I'm going to have leftovers for the next day. The other thing, if you want to explore eating this way, is subscribe to some of the newsletters, the e-newsletters that are out there, and join some of the Facebook groups to get motivated. I'll list them at the end, but Forks Over Knives is one of my absolute favorites. Their stories are so inspiring. They're before and after pictures of people who have gotten off all of their diabetes medications, people who have lost 250 pounds and completely changed their lives. I mean, it's just so inspiring. And I always say, like, it's not just about looking good and feeling healthy. It's about being there for the people you love, and being there for the people who love you. There's so many sad stories out there of people losing family members to a chronic disease that, maybe could be that it was reversible or preventable with a plant-based diet. So the Engine 2 diet is another one, and I'll recommend some others as well in a minute. Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen is one of my favorite transition tools. So this is a free app. There's a graphic here up there. If you go to your app store, I think it's Android and iPhone if you have a smartphone. This is a free app you can download onto your phone. And Dr. Greger is a brilliant doctor. He scours the science for the latest science and the power of nutrition and health. And these are his recommendations: 3 servings of beans a day, and a serving of beans would be half a cup cooked. 1 serving of berries a day because of their antioxidant load and their anti-inflammatory properties. 3 other fruits, could be berries, could be something else. Cruciferous vegetables we didn't talk about, but those are your broccoli, cauliflower, kale. Those have something called sulforaphane in them, which is a real strong cancer fighter. So you want to have at least 1 serving a day. That's, I think, a cup of broccoli or a cup of kale. It might be half a cup, I can't remember. Greens, leafy greens every day if you can, whatever those are, spinach, collard greens. If you're into smoothies, you can keep those greens frozen in your freezer, throw a handful in your smoothie, you'll never taste it. It just makes it thick and a very nice green color. Flax seeds, he recommends a tablespoon a day of flax seeds for their omega-3s. Nuts and spices. So this is a free app. You can download it. He's got suggestions for things you can eat, and it's fantastic. I don't use it anymore because I've been eating this way so long. I don't need to, but it's really helpful if you're just getting started. Here are some cookbooks I recommend. Some of them are 0 oil. Some of them have a little bit of oil. The Oh She Glows cookbook I love. She uses a heavy hand on the oil. I can pretty much take any recipe, and veganize it and low oil it. It's easy. And once you start cooking this way, you can look at a recipe and figure out how you can adapt it. Like I have a sweet potato casserole that my family loves for Thanksgiving, and I make 2 now. I make the really bad kind with like a stick of butter for the people who insist on that. And then I make the other version, which is healthier. So these are some great cookbooks. Let's see, I'm going to take a peek in the Q&A. Yes, I will talk about soy. I will talk about soy in a minute. Thank you, Jenny. I made a note to do that. Let's see. This is a lovely little free printout that you can get at the Cancer Project. It's I believe it's www.cancerproject.org. You can print it out. The Physicians Committee, actually, it's a project of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I had this on the inside of my pantry, or put it on your fridge to remind you to eat the rainbow. These are the foods that have a ton of healthy properties, and you're going to want to incorporate them into your diet. And this is just a helpful little reminder. Here's some resources if you want to jot these down, or I think the library is recording this, so you could go back to it on their website if you wanted to. These are just a handful. There's a ton. All of them are science-based. All of them have, most of them, not all of them, have recipe ideas and inspiring stories that are really, really helpful if you're trying to eat this way. Here are some documentaries you might want to consider watching. It's funny because for me, Forks Over Knives, that did it for me. And I've recommended that to some people, and they'd watched it and they liked it, but they weren't thoroughly inspired or motivated to make a change until they watched What the Health. When they watched What the Health, then they went in 100%. So, it's worth it to watch a few different documentaries, get some different perspectives, get some different information, see what sticks, what motivates you, what resonates with you. The Game Changers is all about, a lot of these elite athletes now, Tom Brady and many others, are mostly, if not all, plant-based because it helps with their recovery. And they're getting all the nutrients they need, all the protein they need. And then I just wanted to end, and then I'll get to some of the questions. Feel free to type questions or thoughts into the chat box or the Q&A. Your genes aren't your health destiny. What you eat has a huge impact on the gene expression. So you may have a history of cancer in your family, but it could be that if you fuel your body with cancer-fighting foods, that might never become an issue for you. A lot of the doctors I've studied under say, like, for example, cardiovascular disease doesn't run in families, bad diets run in families. There are genetic components to a lot of diseases. That's true, and we know that, but it's the percentage that the genes play in the expression of those health problems is far, far less than we thought. A lot of it is influenced by what we eat. And let me go take a peek at the questions. Okay. A couple of people mentioned soy products. So I wish I had this graphic on soy products. I can't speak to the estrogen positive cancer. There's a very small sliver of the population who might have an issue with soy, and I'm not as familiar with that. What I've learned, what I've been taught is that the soy doesn't have estrogen; it has phytoestrogen, and the two are not equal. When you look at Asian populations around the world that eat massive amounts of soy, they have the least amount of breast cancer. So there's a lot of new studies to show that soy is protective against many cancers. There might be a kind of cancer, the estrogen positive breast cancer, that I'm not an expert on. I don't know enough about it to make any recommendations or anything. That's my disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. So if anybody has any health issues in that area, they definitely want to talk to their doctor. However, a mind-blowing amount of soy. Soy is protective against breast cancer if it's the primary sort. Beyond that, I wouldn't want to comment. But soy products are just fine for growing boys. Somebody says, I believe in this way of life, but I am a terrible cook. It doesn't come out good. I've gotten discouraged. Oh yeah. So I would say, search around the web for some inspiring, like one blog that I love, and she has a YouTube channel. It's called Pick Up Limes, Limes. Did I put her on? I think she's on my list over here. Pick Up Limes. I forget her name. Yeah, pickuplimes.com. She's got a whole YouTube channel. She's a nutritionist, plant-based nutritionist. Very inspiring. It takes practice and it takes time. Beans are also an acquired taste. If you don't like beans, I'd say try steamed edamame with salt. They have a tougher texture that some people who don't like the squishiness of beans kind of like. And hummus, you can make hummus with chickpeas, but you can also make hummus with cannellini beans and other white beans and lentils, and throw it in the soups. Like the spaghetti sauce trick, throw those red lentils in the spaghetti sauce and you won't, and you won't even know it's there. Eleanor also mentioned cabbage. Cabbage is a superfood. Cabbage is loaded with sulforaphane, and it's a great shredded in a salad or stir fried in water with spices and other, like I would actually do a stir fry with like tofu and cabbage and put like a delicious sauce or dressing on it. Sauces and dressings are the other trick I didn't get into because we don't have time. They're kind of key. You need to find 1 or 2 or 3 plant-based dressings that you can make with either peanut butter for like an Asian, like peanut butter ginger, or tahini, like a tahini-based garlicky sauce. Tahini is basically like sesame seed butter. It's ground up sesame seeds, or something with apple cider vinegar and honey. I mean, there's so many different things. Honey is technically not vegan, but it is plant-based. So yeah, lots and lots of resources, and really digging into some of these and subscribing to their weekly or monthly newsletters. You're going to get that inspiration right in your inbox, and it's going to be really helpful. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Oh, Eleanor also asked about wheat. So yeah, celiac disease is no joke. And some people really do have wheat allergies or even wheat sensitivities. So if that's you, you're going to want to watch the wheat. But gluten-free has become really trendy and overblown, if you ask me. I like to buy organic wheat, and I also like to buy ancient grains because I like to mix it up. So farro, couscous, amaranth. Even if you go to Market Basket, if you go into their natural food section, you can find all kinds of interesting alternatives to wheat to play around with in baking, and even in terms of like making whole grain salads and things. Like I made a whole grain salad tonight with pearl barley and chopped up Swiss chard and chopped up hazelnuts with probably a teaspoon of olive oil just to soften up that Swiss chard, the Swiss chard leaves, and lemon juice, salt and pepper, and it was delicious. So I'd play around with other grains, and if you're wheat sensitive, I mean, you still test negative. I have a friend who has a gluten allergy, even though she tests negative, and she gets really, really sick. She has to be very careful. So she just goes with brown rice flour and other types of flour. But if you don't have celiac or any kind of wheat allergy, I love whole grains, and I eat whole wheat bread. I eat Ezekiel bread. I bake with whole wheat all the time. You know, you say eat a lot of wheat. I'm not sure what a lot is, because if you're filling your plate up with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, you don't have room to eat too much of anything. You're eating a diversity of foods. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any other questions. Oops, there's one more. Oh, Eleanor said, can we get another session with sauces? I'd love to. Yeah, I guess if you, I'm not doing that much teaching these days because of COVID. But if you go to my website, traciehines.com, you can sign up for my newsletter, and I'm terrible. I'm terrible at sending out newsletters, but my Facebook page is where I try to post some things. I have a very complicated relationship with social media. I'm very torn about it. I'm trying to figure that out. But the Physicians Committee, if you go to the pcrm.org website, they have some, I believe they have some videos you can watch on making different recipes, and they might have something on sauces. I think that's it. Ellen, do you want to wrap up? We just went a little bit over in time. I think we wanted to wrap up by 8. Let me make sure I didn't miss any other questions.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. And
Okay.
there's one more question. What is wrong with unsweetened almond milk? Nothing. Unsweetened almond milk is fantastic. Unless you are really concerned about the environmental impacts, almond milk is probably the highest environmental impact plant milk on the market right now. It takes a lot of water to grow almonds and to process them into almond milk. So I have a mix of foods. I do have almond milk. I've been trying to buy less of it. I've been trying to buy more oat milk and soy milk, and I try and buy organic whenever I can. But yeah, in terms of health, unsweetened almond milk is just fine. So I think that was the last question.
Okay. Thank you, Tracie. That was very informative. I can't stop thinking about the just use water instead of oil. Like, duh.
I know. And when I did the chef's training, it's like, are you kidding me? I had to do this training to figure that out. That's
yeah. I'm like, why
that's
did I
so
not think of
obvious.
that?
Yeah, so
obviously.
yeah.
Well, I think everybody got a lot out of that. I have some great questions and everything. So, but that's
Yeah,
it for
feel free.
tonight.
If anybody has questions, my email, you go to my website, you can send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want more resources, I'm happy to send you what I know and what I recommend. I'm happy to. So just send me an email, and I'll answer whatever questions you have.
All right. And with that, I think we'll end it. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Stay
All right,
well.
bye.
Stay healthy. Thank you.